Some deserts are made of sand, others are made of silence, of steel that rusts without sound, and of fields that stretch further than your eyes were ever meant to see. On the surface, Indiana looks harmless: predictable rows of corn, flat roads, small towns that sleep early and rise with the sun. But that is what makes it dangerous. Because the most ordinary places are the ones that know how to hide. Look closer and you will see them. Tunnels sealed decades ago with no reason why. Hospitals with the power cut but elevators that still move. Voices whispering your name in the corn when there is no one around to speak it. And beneath the earth, inside caves carved from limestone, something waits in the dark, without eyes, without breath, and without explanation. These are not campfire stories. They are not folklore whispered by grandfathers with a drink in their hand. They are real places, places that still exist, places people walk into and never come out the same. There are police reports, missing persons records, abandoned notebooks filled with words that should not exist. There are tapes that never sound the same way twice, footsteps that echo wrong, doors that do not open until you have given up trying. Indiana does not wait for you to find its mysteries. It breathes them into your ear when the wind moves. It hums them through the static of radios that should be silent. It presses them into your memory until you can't forget. And that is the part that should scare you most. Because this land does not forgive, it does not let go. Indiana remembers everything: the soil, the walls, the caves, the very air. Everything carries memory here. Memory of pain, memory of experiments, memory of screams that never reach the surface. You may try to walk away, but once the land has noticed you, once the stories have reached you, they cling. They sit in the silence between your footsteps, waiting for the moment you are finally alone. So lock your doors, pull your blanket up to your chin, put your headphones on. Because after this, you won't see Indiana as a flat, quiet state in the Midwest anymore. You will see it for what it truly is: a place that smiles in daylight but shifts in the dark, a place where some buildings never really closed, some tunnels never really ended, and some voices never really stopped talking. And tonight, we are going to follow them. Down into the basement of a hospital that still knocks from the inside. Mystery number 1: Central State Hospital. Central State Hospital still stands, even if parts of it wish they did not. In Indianapolis, the building rises like a relic of another age. Brick towers and wide lawns designed to calm the restless. In 1848, when it first opened as the Indiana Hospital for the Insane, it was praised as a beacon of modern care. They called it humane. They called it scientific. They promised families that here, their loved ones would be safe, treated, restored. But what looks noble in daylight can fester underground. As the years passed, the hospital changed. By the 1950s, the hallways that once echoed with polite footsteps rattled, instead with overcrowding, with electroshock delivered daily, with surgeries that cut more than they heal. And rumors spread that some patients did not just disappear into paperwork, they vanished into the lower levels. The hospital officially closed its doors in 1994, shut down by budget cuts, lawsuits, and a public beginning to ask too many questions. But not everything inside closed with it. Security guards still patrol, not for intruders, but for the things that move on their own. One guard admitted, only if his name stayed off the record, that there are doors underground that no key will open. And yet somehow they open anyway. Sometimes they close behind you, sometimes they knock back when you touch them. In 2003, a maintenance worker named Alan was sent to check a burst pipe in the lowest wing, a stairwell so corroded it looked like it had not been touched in decades. He took his flashlight. No radio signal, no phone service, no way to call out. When they found him 2 hours later, he was not hurt, not physically, but something had hollowed him out. He was curled in the corner, light still shining, battery still full, his lips trembling but silent. He never returned to work. He never explained. He left only a single notebook behind, 3 words scrawled in uneven rows like a chant, like he had to keep writing them down so he would not forget. I was not alone. I was not alone. I was not alone. Others have gone down since then. Paranormal investigators with infrared cameras, college students with too much courage and too little sense, thrill seekers who thought ghost stories were only stories. Most of them return with blurry photographs, strange recordings, whispers they dismiss in daylight. But a few speak differently. They tell of hallways that should not exist, floors that slope toward nowhere, rooms that look new but are not on any map. One explorer said he heard his own name spoken softly in a voice older than the walls, and when he turned, there was no one there. And always, at the very end of the corridor, a light. Red, dim, pulsing like a heartbeat, waiting for someone to step closer. There are theories, of course. Some say the basement was a site for experimental treatments so brutal they were erased from the records. Others believe something else was buried there. Not just people, but madness itself, cultivated and fed until it became more than human. What is certain is that even today, neighbors still call police to report lights flickering and sealed, the windows, shadows crossing blocked glass, screams rattling out into the night when the building should be empty. But the strangest reports, the ones that linger long after, come from those who swear the walls themselves feel alive, as if the building is not abandoned at all, as if it is listening, waiting for someone foolish enough to speak so it can answer back. That is why the West Wing remains sealed, why tour guides smile and wave but never go down, why the museum upstairs feels harmless, but the floor beneath it vibrates when no one is moving. Because on some nights, when you press your ear to the ground, you will still hear the elevator running. Running, even though the power has been cut for decades. Running, even though the shaft itself has been torn out. Buildings are supposed to die when they are closed. But some do not. Some wait. And some never let their patients leave. Mystery number 2. The Tunnelton Tunnel. South of Bloomington, where the hills fold in on themselves and the limestone runs deeper than the roots of the trees, there is a tunnel carved straight through the rock. Built in 1857, it was meant for trains. Nothing more 1,000 feet of cold stone to carry coal and passengers through the dark. But locals do not call it by its real name. They call it the Crying Tunnel. Because in that long stretch where light disappears, there is always something waiting to be heard. The first recorded death came only weeks after the tunnel opened. A laborer, his name forgotten, was crushed between rails and rock, buried just beyond the mouth. His grave was shallow, pressed against the tunnel wall. He was not the last. Through the decades, more stories accumulated: workers caught in collapses, drifters struck by trains, wanderers who went in and never came out the other side. But the story that endures is not about the dead bodies. It is about the scream. They say it always comes from the midpoint, the exact center where the light behind you fades and the light ahead has not arrived. You will be walking, your breath echoing, your steps measured, and then sharp, sudden, cut off, a scream that sounds close enough to touch and yet buried in the stone itself. In 1974, 2 teenagers went in to film graffiti with a Super 8 camera and a tape recorder. Halfway in, their camera jammed. Their recorder hissed, and then came the scream. A woman's voice, shrill and strangled, like someone caught behind the walls. They ran. When they played back the tape, there was no scream, only static and a soft click, like someone turning off the sound. In 2001, a man named Robert G. tried to walk the tunnel alone. He left his car idling outside, headlights cutting through the mist. He never returned. His flashlight was discovered later, standing upright in the exact center of the tunnel, still glowing, waiting like a marker for the place he vanished. What unsettles people most is that the cry changes. Some nights it is a woman, other nights a man, and sometimes it is not human at all. Locals describe it as wet, sharp, like bone breaking underwater. Others do not hear it with their ears, they feel it, deep in their chest, like the pressure of something seeing them before they see it. Explanations exist, of course: limestone echo chambers, underground water shifting, stress-induced hallucinations. But none of those explain why the cry is always in the same spot, why it always stops you in your tracks, why people can't describe the feeling without shivering. Afterward, some who've dared to photograph the midpoint swear the stone itself is changing. Water stains form shapes that look too deliberate, faces pressed against rock, hands frozen mid-reach, eyes blurred but watching. They say the tunnel is not echoing the dead, it is holding them. Like the walls themselves are storing screams, waiting to give them back to anyone foolish enough to listen. The Tunnelton Tunnel is still open today, still legal to walk. Brave souls wander through with flashlights and shaky cameras, laughing on the way in and silent on the way out. They will tell you the same thing if you hear the scream. Do not stop. Don't run. Just keep moving. Because if you freeze in that center point, if you stand there too long, you might not be alone anymore. And Indiana has more than one place that does not just echo, it remembers. Because deeper underground, in the caves carved into the southern limestone, there is something waiting that does not scream at all. It just stands and stares. Mystery number 3, the Wyandotte Caves and the White Face. The caves under Indiana do not feel empty. They feel alive. The Wyandotte system stretches for miles, a maze of limestone veins twisting under the southern hills. Tourists see only the safe trails, the guided routes, the clean chambers with electric lights. But beyond the markers, past the second cathedral chamber, there are paths older than the state itself. Some have not been mapped since the 1800s. Some were sealed with concrete, not to protect them, but to protect us. It was 1984 when 2 veteran spelunkers went off route on a private expedition. They followed a fissure in the rock that should not have been there. A fault line, narrow and unmarked. It opened into a space so dark their lights barely reached the edges. That is where they saw it. A figure, pale, too tall, too thin, standing just outside the circle of light. At first, they thought it was another explorer, but it was not wearing a helmet. It was not wearing gear. It was not moving at all. As they stepped closer, careful not to lose footing, the beam of their lamp caught its face. White. Smooth. Empty. No mouth. No nose. Just 2 deep hollows where eyes should have been. One of the men turned back immediately. The other tried to step closer. He did not scream. He did not fall. He simply collapsed, as if the cave itself had snuffed him out. When rescuers found him hours later, he was face down, his flashlight still glowing, untouched. He woke, but he would not speak. Not then. Not ever again. His partner, the one who turned back, said only one sentence before disappearing from the caving world altogether. It sees you when you see it. Since then, stories have trickled out like water through stone. A ranger who swore he saw the figure in a chamber known only to staff. Explorers who walked deeper and claimed their compasses spun like they were inside a storm. People who heard their own voices echo back before they even spoke. The caves are known to breathe. The air grows thick, as if alive, but down there, it feels heavier, like someone else is matching your heartbeat in the dark. The figure never moves, never speaks, never reaches. But those who've seen it say the terror does not end when you leave the cave. Weeks later, they start seeing it again in windows at night, in mirrors fogged with steam, in dreams where it stands at the far end of a hallway and does nothing but wait. They wake sweating, whispering the same words. It remembers. Some scientists chalk it up to sensory deprivation, the brain conjuring shapes when the dark becomes too much. But what unsettles even skeptics is the consistency. Separate explorers on separate trips, years apart, all describing the same face. The same stillness. The same impression that the cave is not echoing them, it is observing them. And maybe it always has been. One ranger, speaking off the record, said something he should not have. He said there is a room underground with no walls, no boundaries, just space. And in the middle of that space stands something that does not want to leave. It only wants you gone. Some things scream, some things whisper, but this one does not need to. Because silence is stronger when you feel it looking back at you. And if you think caves can't follow you home, ask the people who still wake up to reflections they can't explain. But not every mystery here hides in stone. Some are rooted in fields, in the flat land where corn stretches to the horizon and where the silence does not stay silent. Sometimes it speaks. Mystery number 4, static in the corn, the listening fields. The fields outside Seymour look like any other stretch of Indiana farmland. Corn as tall as your chest, endless rows swallowing the horizon, roads so straight they seem to run forever. But out here, where the land is flat enough that you can see the curve of the earth if you stand long enough, something else is hiding. It does not whisper through wind or creak through stalks. It comes through radios, through machines meant to carry voices, until they start carrying a voice that should not exist. Truckers were the first to speak about it. In 2004, a driver pulled over near County Road 600 to fix a flat. No cell reception, no towers nearby. His CB radio shut off, and then it clicked alive. No call sign, no chatter, just a voice buried inside static. He said it sounded like someone reading instructions or scripture, but twisted, syllables bent out of shape, like English spoken through broken teeth. He drove away. Minutes later, his dashboard speakers lit up. The truck was off. The key was not even in the ignition, but the voice was still there. Others tell the same story. The static does not hum like normal interference. It pulses, like waves pressing against your skin, and inside it, always a voice. Sometimes a man, sometimes a woman, sometimes something that does not even try to sound human. A woman driving alone once said she stopped to stretch, only to hear words rising not from her speakers, not from her phone, but from under her car. She drove away in panic, but the dreams followed. Dreams of fields, endless and silver under the moon, with something standing motionless in the center waiting for her to come back. Locals call it the listening field. They believe the voice is not broadcasting, it is answering. In 2011, a retired radio technician tried to trace the signal with scanners, frequency readers, even a Geiger counter. At 2:11 a.m. exactly, every instrument spiked. His meters glowed, the air hissed, his recorder shook. He followed the signal to the edge of the corn, where a narrow footpath seemed to open, but the next morning, when he returned, the path was gone. Just stalks untouched, no break, no bend, no sign of anyone passing. When he played back his recording, the static was there. So was something else. A whisper, one word, repeated over and over. Turn. 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 Scientists talk about tower bleed, weather interference, the shifting of underground aquifers. But that does not explain why the signal always comes at the same time between 2:11 and 2:13 a.m. in the same radius of just a few meters. It does not explain why people's compasses spin when they step inside, why footsteps echo wrong, why the corn seems to lean away from you, as if the field itself does not want you there. In 2019, a man vanished after parking his truck along the same road. The vehicle was still running. The door opened. The radio dial stuck on a frequency that should not have existed. He has never been found. Only the static remained, hissing like breath pressed against glass. Locals say the field is not haunted. It is alive. They say the voice in the static is not asking for help. It is testing, learning, repeating, waiting. And if you hear it once, you have already answered back. Some signals fade when you drive away, but others follow you home, slipping into your walls, humming through your silence, reminding you that you have been heard. And in Bloomington, just 100 miles away, the silence takes another form. Doors that open where they should not, tunnels that lead to places no one remembers building. Mystery number 5. The Bloomington Underground. If the fields outside Seymour speak, the ground beneath Bloomington listens in silence. Under this quiet college town lies a network of tunnels that should not exist, sealed spaces that appear on no official map. They are not part of the sewer system, not part of the steam lines, not part of anything the university will admit, and yet people have stepped inside them. People who swear that once you go down, the ground does not stay the same. The layout shifts. The walls seem to breathe. The exits close behind you. The first real report surfaced in 1991 when a maintenance worker traced a leak into the basement of the university library. Behind a rusted service door, he found a stairwell he did not recognize. 13 steps down, then a left turn into a corridor. Smooth concrete walls. No pipes, no lights, no sound. He followed it until his flashlight beam landed on a metal hatch with no handle, scratched with a single word, looking. When he turned back, the stairs were gone. Only more hallway, stretching further than his light could reach. They found him hours later, dehydrated, confused, crawling through a mechanical room 6 buildings away. Dirt clung to his hands and knees as if he had been clawing at the ground. Since then, stories have multiplied. Students who discovered doors in the floor of dorm basements that vanished the next day. Janitors who opened supply closets only to find staircases that spiral into blackness. Security guards who check cameras and see hooded figures walking sealed tunnels. only to rewind the footage and find nothing but black screens where the images should be. One guard swore the timestamp kept running as though something had been there, even when the camera refused to admit it. The most chilling disappearance came in 1992. A graduate student named Paul H., researching sound design, was last seen heading into a stairwell that no longer exists. His notebook was found a week later stuffed inside a ventilation shaft. The last page read, "The hallway does not turn, you do." Explorers who've gone looking describe strange distortions. Watches stop. Phones glitch. Batteries drain faster than they should. And always the same feeling in the air. Cold but heavy. As if the walls themselves were lungs holding their breath. Some say the tunnels do not feel built. They feel grown. The concrete too clean, too seamless. As if it was not poured but formed from something deeper. One man claimed he lay down on the floor to listen. He heard whispering not from above, not behind him, but from beneath. The ground spoke his name in a voice he did not recognize. He left and never went back. Theories abound. Some say the tunnels were Cold War experiments in sound isolation, meant to test how long a person could last in silence. Others whisper about psychological trials, doors built to confuse, to shift, to break the mind. But the most unsettling detail is not about the past, it is about the present. Because even now, doors appear, students find them, staff stumble on them, and each time, the stories are the same. Downward staircases, corridors that do not end, exits that should not exist. Some tunnels are built for travel, some are built for hiding. But these do not feel like either, they feel like waiting. And outside the safety of the city streets, beyond the paved roads and the maps, Indiana holds another kind of waiting. Not under the ground this time, but out in the open, in a field of grass and fog, where light itself stands still. Mystery number 6. The light between the silos. Not all mysteries hide in tunnels or caves. Some sit in plain sight, waiting for fog to roll in. Outside of Salem, down an unmarked stretch of road, 3 abandoned silos rise like broken teeth. Rusted, hollow, forgotten since the 1960s. They are not what people talk about. It is the space between them. An empty field of grass where, on certain nights, a light appears, a pale glow, floating a few feet above the ground. It does not illuminate, it does not spread. It just hovers, still, as if it were never meant to be seen. The first written account came from a farmhand in 1977. He said the light was always there before sunrise, at the same spot, as if it had a schedule. One morning, he tried to touch it. He woke up 2 hours later, face down in the grass 50 yards away, his nose bleeding, ears ringing, no memory of what had happened. In 2008, a drone pilot tried to capture it on video. His drone froze midair, suspended as if caught in invisible wire. When it finally fell, the SD card was blank. Not damaged, not corrupted, just clean, as though it had never been used. Other pilots reported the same. Batteries drained instantly. Memory wiped as if the machine itself had forgotten. The few videos that exist show almost nothing. A shimmer in fog, a glow swallowed by static, and then black. Those who've seen it in person say it behaves strangely. If you walk toward it, it backs away. Not fast, not evasive, just slow, measured, always staying out of reach, like it knows exactly how close you are willing to go. Ownership records for the land are no less strange. Over the last 30 years, the property has changed hands 4 times, always through shell companies, always in transactions tied to government, buyers. No one can say why. Some locals whisper it was once a test site, others that it is still a containment zone, a place built not to hold crops, but something else. But it is not just the light people fear, it is the sound. Witnesses say when the fog is thickest and the glow appears, a hum follows. Low, steady, too deep to be wind or machines. It crawls into your teeth, rattles your bones. One camper who stayed near the field in 2015 described it like this. It was not sound. It was memory. Like remembering something I never lived. He left before sunrise, his camera, untouched all night, contained one single image. A blurry white shape, symmetrical, glowing. Behind it, darker. A figure tall and still, a long black outline, watching. The silos remain. The field remains. And so does the light. It does not chase. It does not vanish. It just waits, as if guarding, as if warning. Because some places do not want to be touched. They only want to be remembered. And that is what binds Indiana's shadows together. Not screams or faces or static, but memory. This land remembers everything. Every voice, every disappearance, every step. And if you have followed this far, maybe now it remembers you too. Indiana does not look like the kind of place that keeps secrets. On maps, it is flat and simple, a patchwork of farmland and towns where time seems slow. But now you know better. You have walked through the corridors of a hospital that still breathes, where patients were buried in paperwork and in walls. You have stood in a tunnel where a scream waits in the stone. Unchanged for over a century, you have stepped into caves that watch you back, where faces without mouths still haunt explorers in their dreams. You have listened to radios that should not speak, to fields that answer when no one is calling. You have descended into tunnels that shift with every step, doors that vanish, voices that rise from beneath the floor. You have seen light in the fog that erases memory, a glow that does not move, because it has no reason to, and all of them share one truth: they do not end. Central State Hospital still hums with an elevator that does not exist. The Tunnelton Tunnel still cries in the middle of the night. The Wyandotte Caves still hold a figure that does not walk but somehow follows. The listening field still pulls travelers off the road with a voice that learns. The Bloomington Underground still shifts under the campus, waiting for someone new to turn the wrong corner. The silos still guard their light, humming until you taste the sound in your teeth. None of these places are gone. None of them ever will be. That is what makes Indiana different. Ghost stories fade, legends grow thin. But here, the land remembers. It remembers screams and footsteps, faces pressed into stone, whispers left in the static. It remembers those who went missing. It remembers those who tried to forget. And once the land remembers you, it does not let go. So lock your doors. Keep your lights on. Or do not. Because light does not always protect you here. If you have listened this far, if you have followed every step into the hospital basements, the limestone tunnels, the endless fields, then maybe you have already been marked. Maybe the next time you hear static at night, it won't be silence. Maybe the next time you walk past a mirror, you will see something tall and pale behind you. Maybe the land is already breathing through the cracks in your walls, waiting for you to be quiet enough to hear it. Indiana does not knock, it does not chase, it waits, and now that you have heard its stories, it will wait for you too. Tell me, which of these stayed with you the longest? Which one will follow you tonight when you turn off the light? And where should we go next? Because if Indiana remembers, the next state already does as well.